I think that one thing that is not given enough credit in the Destiny community is the game's world building, lore, and characters. And while some of them are praised, I believe that I want to contribute to such praise for one of the game's most prominent characters, which is Callus. So this video is going to be entirely about Callus and his journey and how he became a disciple and what has come out of it. This video will be in two parts. In part 1, I will be reading out loud a post I found that summarizes Callus and his path, and in the second part I will give my own thoughts about what I think about the post, about Callus as a character, about his journey and such, because I believe Callus is one of the most well-written characters and antagonists in Destiny universe and just in the media overall. This post was made on the Destiny lore subreddit by a user going by the nickname of Edumesh, and it's titled The Tragedy of Callus's Disciplehood, an analysis of a lonely old man. Hello everyone. In this post I want to talk about my favorite narrative element of Lightfall, and hopefully start some discussion about it. Lightfall gets criticism for its story, and while it is clear that it was not as good as Witch Queen, I don't think anyone can argue otherwise. There's still many elements to it that are quite good in my opinion, chiefest among them being the conclusion of Callus's character arc that, in my estimation, is nothing short of masterful. So, our journey with Callus has been a long ride with tons of twists and turns. He went from being the jolly but weird uncle that we would party with aboard the Leviathan for cool rewards on vanilla Destiny 2, to a friend, and possible into a form of alliance with the Cabal once we helped him retake his empire, which was seen as a possibility back in Curse of Osiris and Warmind, to realizing that he had very strange and concerning tendencies and dangerous delusions in Season of Opulence, to him going mask off in the Glycon and Season of the Haunted. Given how Callus was so committed to becoming a disciple and was obsessed with being recognized by the Witness, I expected the old Emperor to behave much differently than he ended up doing once Lightfall came out, and this to me is the most fascinating plot component of the entire expansion and says a lot about Callus as not only as an antagonist but a complex character. When I played Lightfall for the first time, I wondered why Callus wasn't elated at the fact that he was finally a disciple. Why wasn't he revitalized by the power and the purpose that had been provided to him after so much work to get there? Why was he still as apathetic, lazy, and overall depressed as he has always been on his moments of reflection when he wasn't distracting himself with a vice? I wondered where the ambitious Callus from Season of the Haunted had gone, the Callus that was so enraptured by the prospect of taking over Nazarek's pyramid and was so hell-bent on giving himself to the Witness. I think the answer is this. Callus did not end up being a good disciple because he was a hollow man on the inside. But let's go back to the rise of Callus as Emperor. He overthrew the Praetoriate and assumed full control of the Empire because he disliked being their puppet and also saw how they enriched themselves at the expense of the people. He was disgusted by the empty, militaristic dictatorship they had enslaved the Cabal to, and he wanted his people to instead be capable of enjoying the good things in life. Military might not for the sake of being mighty, but so that they could defend the beauty of their existence. He wanted to spread his riches, to bring merry and laughter and festivities to no end, so that his people could feel alive like he was. He showed great drive when he masterminded the fall of the Praetoriate, and that drive got him to be the Emperor, and then his energy just kind of fizzled out? His rule stagnated over the centuries. He lost sight of what he wanted to do, and he just kind of fell into a comfortable stupor and malaise that blinded him to everything, even a coup sprouting right beneath his feet, and stole his spirit away. Callus seems to be the type of man to only think on the now. He sets his sights on something, and he gets it because he wants it, but he never sits down to think on why he wants it. It's as if the destination doesn't matter at all, and the only thing that is important is the thrill of the chase, the thrill of working towards something that makes him feel like he has finally found purpose, like he's finally living up to the potential he feels that he has, like he's actually achieving something that he can be proud of and fulfilled by. But when he actually gets whatever he wants, it's just not the same. It's not the same as what he fantasized it would be. It's not the same as he hoped it would be. Reality always disappoints when compared to whatever dream he had cooked up in his head. We see the trait of Callus rear its head again when he became a disciple, which is kind of a dark mirror to his rise as emperor. Callus went to enormous lengths to make himself seen by the Witness after the pyramids arrived to Sol in Season of Arrivals and completely ignored him. He experimented tirelessly on the Glycon to make contact with the Witness, he worked diligently to maintain the signal going in Vox Obscura to build himself the Shadow Legion, and he put himself in harm's way to do what he needed to do in Season of the Haunted to finally rise to Disciple. It's even mentioned by many characters that back then, Callus seemed energized, like he had shaken off his stupor and his vices and his sloth and actually got to work on his goals. And he was brilliant at it. Callus was a very intelligent man when he set his mind on a goal, and he could sit down and plan each step on his way towards achieving it. And then he becomes a disciple and back to broody Callus. But why? Because he had crafted a fantasy for himself and deluded himself into thinking the Witness and the rank of disciple were something they weren't. If we remember the Chronicon, that infamous lore book that is literally all fanfiction written by Callus and his historians, we know what Callus wanted his end to look like. The Chronicon may be a funny lore book that we can all laugh at due to how absurd it is, but I think it gives us a window into Callus's tendencies to dream and fantasize and separate himself from reality. He thought being a disciple would be this glorious honor that would see him ride alongside his master to the literal end of the universe, and that he would get to sit at our side and watch it all end in one moment of absolute peace. Such was his narcissistic desire to be important that he placed himself as the last being in all of creation to die as the Witness completes its final shape. And instead, being a disciple meant work. It meant being a lapdog for the Witness. It meant giving up his power. Not paracausal power, as he obviously gained a ton of it, but his ability to choose for himself, and he ended up becoming a servant. It meant no longer being the main character, which Callus had always seen himself as being, and becoming an extension for the Witness, a tool to be used and then discarded. There's a small detail that is easy to miss but says a lot about how Callus thought his time serving the Witness was going to go.
My faithful Shadow Legion, this is your glorious Emperor speaking. Our alliance with the Witness bears such delectable fruits. Together, we will devour Sol.
On the first mission of Lightfall, he sends out a message to the Shadow Legion boasting about the benefits that their partnership with the Witness was already bringing them. I believe he actually deluded himself into thinking he and the Witness were equals. Equal thinkers, equal leaders, equal philosophers and visionaries. He certainly did not see himself as a slave, which is what he actually ended up becoming. And now, this is the main point that I'm getting at. Why did Callus have this tendency to dream and fall so deeply into the fantasy worlds and tales he spun? Because Callus wanted the world to actually be like his fantasies. Because Callus could not enjoy life for what it was, despite him constantly saying he did, and basing an enormous facet of his outward personality around it. I'm going to read an outburst that he had in a Lightfall Collector's Edition lorebook and think on what is actually being said between the lines. The outburst goes as follows. Can't any of you live? Am I the only one here who's not utterly deranged? The only reason we don't all kill ourselves is that we feel good, the only reason we do anything at all, even breathing, is that it feels nice. That's the only way the universe has ever found to make existence tolerable. The only reason to exist is that fickle little quiver of reward the brain gives us for eating, or drinking, or dancing, or working, or freeing our people from the bedamned preorderate, or loving our daughter. That's all that's worthwhile in life. Stimulation of the three primary vagus nerves. And if our whole psyche weren't built on the need for that reward, what would we be? Hive? Vex? Nothing, Cabal, I tell you. Nothing, Cabal. When I read this passage, I don't visualize a man that is actually happy. I visualize a man that is so desperate to be happy that he has to scream to the high heavens that he's feeling something he isn't. A man that is forceful in his rage and screaming, for it is the only way he feels he can convince himself that what he is saying is true, and that is panically attempting to convince those around him that he is happy because he knows that deep down he isn't, but doesn't want to confront it. Because it is ultimately more comfortable and easy to fall to an abyss and stay there, rather than to try and climb out of it, or admit that you need help and allow others to be there for you. Then is it any wonder that Callus gave himself to every single vice in existence? Foods, drinks, drugs, you name it. And Callus has probably done it to a debauched excess that would make the worst addict you know look tame in comparison. Callus did all of these things to escape from his pain rather than confront it. To a man that hates the world, escapism can feel like the only time he can breathe. It is no wonder then that he neglected his duties as emperor once the power high of actually having gotten the position ran out of him. Then the Reddit post is about to go into a description of Callus's wife, or Kaido's mother, and the post reads that it's implied that Callus's wife kind of left the world on her own terms, if you know what I mean, but I believe we actually don't know exactly what happened to her. Some people speculate that Callus's wife left the world on her own terms, but she is dead, we know that. It's either she left the world on her own terms, or Callus might have killed her by himself. We're not sure exactly, but what is known is that Callus loved her, and was still a decent human being at the time when his wife was still alive. The only proper and concrete source of information that we have is that in the Heart Shadow lore tab it reads, "I first held the blade when it was passed down to me after my mother's death, and upon the birth of my daughter, bequeathed it to its rightful owner, her mother, and when her mother was no longer, it was my duty then to pass the blade on to Kaido." So, some imply once again that Kaido's mother either went away on her own terms, or Callus might have killed her, we're not sure. What we know that he was incapable of facing the truth. Callus was a man capable of deep and powerful feelings, but he didn't know how to actually process them healthily, how to understand them. The loss of Kaido's mother impacted him greatly, and was probably a source of immense guilt that he drowned out with further vice, rather than try and confront it, and his jealousy over his daughter, showing a war beast more affection than she did to him, led him to have it killed. Callus expected love, and he wanted it more than anything else in the world, but he was incapable of actually reflecting on his actions and working to improve himself. It was always somebody else's fault. It was always his daughter being ungrateful, or his people incapable of understanding him, or him being shunned due to being uncabal in his ways and beliefs. Never himself, though. He could never blame himself or accept responsibility for his actions. He would rather help the witness destroy the universe that had shunned him, rather than face the truth that everyone he ever loved shun him because of his own actions. As for the witness, I think it understood exactly how damaged Callus was, and it rubbed it all over his face throughout his time as a disciple. The witness is very entrenched in its belief that life is suffering, And I think Callus was the perfect illustration of everything it sees wrong with life. When the witness says that all living things cry out for salvation, it thinks of people like Callus. When Callus and the witness first speak on Lightfall, Callus starts with calling himself great and glorious and powerful and tries to engage in all the usual pizzazz, and then the witness dismissively turns to leave, not even reacting to his "I'm jolly and living the high life, baby" act, which at this point you should understand is extremely fake. When Callus emerges from his sarcophagus, he creates a chalice and calls for a toast. The tormentors don't even acknowledge his request. Sure, he could drink alone if he wanted to, but you notice that throughout the entirety of Lightfall his chalice is completely empty. He doesn't want to drink alone, because what he wants deep down is companionship, someone to drink it with and find happiness with. The Typhoon Imperator itself is incredibly unsettling to me. Why? Because it's a grave for everything that Callus could have been. Sure, it's impressive and intimidating, and it has gigantic Callus Sphinx on its front, because of course it has one, but when you go inside of it, it's just eerie. Melancholic, almost, like a faint echo where something glorious and beautiful had once been. Callus has it draped with Cabal banners that look like a mixture between the Witness's iconography and what he had back on the Leviathan. He has his golden statue inside, his chandeliers, his crystallized wine covering the floors. He even made a little makeshift gladiatorial arena where he had the radial mast. It's like he wanted the Typhoon Imperator to feel like home. He wanted it to remind him of his abandoned Leviathan and life as Emperor, like if he was actually missing what he left behind to become a disciple. But it's ultimately just another soulless pyramid, as empty as everything and everyone that pledges themselves to witness become. Hell, the Shadow Legion themselves are a far cry from the glorious and proud legions Callus commanded back when he was Emperor. They are soulless, empty things that are programmed into serving him unquestioningly and can't feel anything. They don't serve him out of love. They don't feel proud of their work. In their Gilded Precept Lost Sector, you can even see them trying to recreate the rite of proving, but their attempt is wrong because they don't even remember what it is to be Cabal, or what the tradition even meant.
It's not like other Cabal ships we've been inside.
It wouldn't be. Callus has abandoned much of what made us Cabal. Still, there may be worthwhile intelligence. Traitors and deserters, the lot of them. You do the Cabal Empire a great service, Guardian.
All of them?
Any Cabal who have wound up here are no longer Cabal. There was ample opportunity to turn back.
You have all you wanted, Emperor.
I am glorious. Thanks to you, my witness.
The witness took away his people's soul and gave him shiny golden bodies in exchange so that they can pretend to be something they aren't, just like their emperor. So when the witness told Callus that he had what he had always wanted, I see it as nothing as the most venomous sarcasm I can think of. It's such a vile collection of words that goes a long way exposing the witness's cruelty and sheer hatred it feels for creation, like it was almost delighting in punishing Callus and feeding his rage to in turn use him to punish the universe as well. All of these empty things are as empty as he has always been, and he doesn't like what he sees. He doesn't like being forcefully confronted with his hollow heart, and this is all without even going into the famous scene where the witness tells Callus straight to his face that he fears to have a purpose, and that is why he fails and is weak. Is it any wonder then why Callus actually angrily snaps at the witness upon being told this?
You fear loss, Emperor. Your fear brings you pain. We know pain. Our purpose is its end. You have no purpose because you fear to seek one. That fear is your failure.
My failure! My failure! I have fed this force with vicious subjugation, battered down the gates of our enemies, and seized our glittering prize. Why? Because I wanted it!
For a man that is so desperate to escape his reality, being confronted with the truth must be the worst thing in the world. The pain Callus feels in that moment, the self-hatred, the enormous sadness, the humiliating feeling of inadequacy, makes him talk back to the fucking witness. That's how powerful his emotions are in that moment. Even then, as he is pouring his heart out, the witness immediately puts him in his place and intimidates him into getting the job done.
Your grasp, and all you can think of to do with it is...
Secure the veil. We will create the link.
Infinite apologies. The veil is yours. It will be done.
They are not equals. They never were. He wasn't allowed to express his true feelings openly without immediately being told to shut the hell up. And I think Callus realizes this in complete horror as he stares into whatever unspeakable monstrosity his master turned into before his eyes. You can even see Callus desperately grasping at anything that might make him even slightly happy throughout the campaign. When we go for the radial mast, Callus has this arena for gladiators ready for us, filled with contestants and champions that he knows are going to die by our hand. He wants us to have fun. He wants to have fun with us. He wants to recreate the feeling he must have surely gotten when we ran the gauntlet back on the Leviathan. That's why he doesn't do anything else but spectate and comment. And then the final boss fight itself. As soon as we arrive, he says with great anticipation how he has been waiting for this moment for a long time. He calls it exquisite. He's laughing throughout the fight, saying things like, "Don't die on me yet, Guardian," because he wants to extend this perfect moment for as long as possible. Ever wonder why he doesn't use the Sons of Lubre attack on you frequently, and only uses it when you're camping out of a corner for too long? Because that isn't fun. You're ruining the moment, and Callus wants both you and himself to enjoy themselves in this last fight with theatrics and drama, worthy of how he was always thought his confrontation was going to go. I think that at this point, knowing the witness was pissed at him and saw him for how pathetic he truly was, and Keitel having completely renounced him and any connection they might have had, we were truly the last person Callus could connect with on a deeper emotional level. We were his last friend he ever had, and it didn't matter to him how one-sided this connection was. And even then, as it becomes clear that he's going to lose and die, he goes back to his fantasy land. He demands the witness venerate him and give him more power, when it's extremely clear that by this point he's been discarded like a wet sock, and the witness does not give two shits on whether he lives or dies. His resonance shield goes weaker and weaker every time he reapplies it, as if the great power the witness gave him as a disciple is running out. Like if the witness decided to turn off the tap and leave Callus on his own, which is not something that happened to Rolk or Nezarek. And on the second phase, with his armor torn apart and his resonance shield refusing to reapply itself, you can even see him pound his chest as if he's trying to put it back on. He yells out, as if he's trying to reaffirm to himself that he is in fact those things and not just a sad old man that is about to die. His last line of battle dialogue before his doom is, which is yet another attempt at deluding himself to comfort, because at this point he knows it's over and still doesn't want to confront it. And then, in his last moments before his ultimate demise, he screams out a name. He doesn't beg the witness for forgiveness like Rolk did. He doesn't scream out to Keitel that he's sorry for everything. He doesn't try to delude himself into thinking that he is going to live, or fool himself into thinking that he can unmake centuries of abuses with a half-assed apology. No. In his last moment alive, Callus is honest with himself for the first time in his life. He screams out, Kamali. We don't know who this person is, but a very popular theory, and one that I personally subscribe to, is that it was Keitel's mother. His life's true love, and a person he destroyed through his own faults and vices, the eternal symbol to his failure, probably the cause behind his self-hatred, as the shame of making the person you love the most in the world die must be indescribable. She left a hole in Callus that nothing could fill. Not drinks, not food, not power, not Keitel, not being emperor, not being a disciple. Nothing. And that hole in Callus's heart ate him alive, right until his demise. By Callus screaming out that name as he died, he was honest with his own feelings and confronted his pain directly instead of choosing to escape from it. How sad, then, that Callus took the first step towards what could have been a path of growth and redemption right as he died. And the only person that ever gave him any sort of pity to his death was Keitel, surprised that we have given him a Cabal's and, which means ant by battle.
No more running away. Rest now.
And his legion won't even honor him like the Red Legion did for Gaul and just march on, for their true master had always been the Witness, who was moved on to greater matters and considered Callus a useful tool, but nothing beyond that. The only thing that remains of him is this ugly sphinx on the face of the Typhoon Imperator, but at this point that sphinx isn't intimidating or majestic or grand or anything Callus probably thought it would embody. And now is just kind of pitiful, sad. That is why, for as much as he deserved it and brought this upon himself, Callus's disciplehood was a damn tragedy, and I can't help but feel bad for him, despite everything that he did. I want to thank Adumesh again for this amazing post. I will link it in the description if you wish to ingest this amount of information via text rather than audio, and I want to leave a couple of my own thoughts regarding what I think about the post, the Callus as the character, and just what we have been through so far. It's not going to be scripted or anything, I'm just going to go on by my own ideas and my thoughts. Posts like these, and stories like these, and research and theories like these, and the summaries and the paths of characters is the reason why I still play Destiny 2 for this long. It's nice and refreshing to dredge and indulge myself in this kind of analysis, where it's kinda proven that this game is just more than queuing into 5 strikes to get a pinnacle. This video game is more than chasing a god roll in a dungeon or something. This kind of research and analysis gives the game depth. Depth that will continue on and will ensure that this game is still this rich and relevant despite any possible live service kind of formula. These kind of arcs is what I want to see in Final Shape. That's what I want to see beyond Final Shape or Destiny 3, doesn't matter. The fact that we have been with this character since Destiny Vanilla, since Leviathan, and then his progress was more and more nudged in Season of Opulence, in Season of the Haunted, in Glycon, in Lightfall, just year after year, we see our growth and this character's growth as a villain, as the ex-emperor, as a father, as a disciple. It proves that Destiny can write these deep and sympathetic and interactive villains that are not just the bad guy of the week, and that makes me really excited So far they've been nailing it, but specifically the villain side, the Witness, Callus, Sabathun. That makes me really excited for what kind of dilemmas and what kind of situations Final Shape has to offer. If you're now at this point, I thank you for listening to a 30-minute White Man essay on a single Destiny 2 character, but if you wish to see more of this with different characters, please write in the comments and I'll see what I can do. Thanks for watching.